Good morning. Welcome to Freeway Bible Study for this, the 23rd day of March 2018. Today we're going to do Genesis 20, which is Abimelek and Abraham. My name is Kurt Bell. I'm your host for Freeway Bible Study. This is my motorcycle, a BMW R1150 GSA. So I always check it out just before I get to ride. Everything looks good. I've got a long 50-mile commute to work. I live in Irvine. That's where I am right now. And I work in Riverside, California. So it's about 50 miles each way. And here we go. And every day on my little commute, I read one chapter of the Bible and I think about it. And of late, I've actually begun to turn on the camera and record my thoughts as I go. Share them with anyone who might be interested. And, oh, by the way, I'm an atheist, so I don't believe in the existence of God, nor most of the supernatural stories and ideas in the Bible. Or for that matter, any religion. And so I go through, I'm making this journey with the mind and the eye of a skeptic. But I'm trying not to make this a polemic. I'm not trying to go after the Bible necessarily, although I will avail myself of that opportunity when it arises, and I think there's lots of chances for that, so we'll see how this goes. But that's not my first aim. My first aim is to make sure that I have a very good understanding of what the Bible has to say, and so that I can relate that to my culture, and also so I can better converse and understand what believers are saying to me, whether those believers be Jews, Christians, Muslims, fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, or just your regular everyday Latter-day Saints. I don't know, how do they distinguish themselves from the fundamentalists? I'm not sure. So anyway, let's go. So Genesis 20, Abraham and Abimelek. I've been saying and thinking about it all day, and now I can't remember. Abimelek? Hold on. Abimelek. Hold on. There it is. Abimelek. Now I'm going to say it all wrong. So we've been following Abraham through his journeys, and I won't be long-winded. I'll just get to the point. But I'll always like to summarize where we've been and where we are and where we're headed. Well, that's where we're headed, but where we've been and where we are. We've been following Abraham and his nephew Lot. And in the last chapter, 2 chapters ago, Abraham was visited by God, who reminded him of his covenant and forecast that Abraham's wife Sarah would have a child in the coming year. Then we skip to the next one. That was Genesis 18, and then in Genesis 19 we get the famous story of Lot and the angels visiting Sodom, and Lot's family's rescue from Sodom, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and the resulting good times that were had on the mountain between Lot and his daughters. Now in this chapter we resume our story with Abraham, who is now journeyed a little bit south, and I think the area he's in is called Nahur. I did a Facebook post with the name of the place. Now I can't remember. Nigger? That sounds like a bad word. It's something like that. Anyway, there's a little area south, and I'm having trouble remembering names this morning. Sometimes the names come easier to me, but not today. Maybe I'm trying too hard. Negeh. Anyway, I looked it up. The reason I'm dwelling on that, and I wish I could remember it, was I actually looked it up. Got out Google and typed in the name and found it and learned that it was an interesting location. It was not only the setting for Genesis 20, but also the place where King Solomon had his court And this is also the exact same place where Moses, much later in the Bible, will send his 12 scouts to scout the land. This is in making ready for the return to, entrance into the promised land. So that was significant to me, because it meant that this was hold on. Forget about it. I shouldn't do that. I want to remember it, but I can't. Give it up, Kurt. It is not meant to be. I can't remember the name. It'll be in the notes. But it's an interesting place. A lot goes on here. So it turns out there's a king here, and I mentioned his name just a moment ago. Abimelek. Gosh. Oh well, that's just the way it is. I'm not going to remember these names. There's a king down there, Abimelek or something like that. And Abraham, you remember back in Egypt land when he was down there with Sarah? They were much younger then, and Sarah was apparently very beautiful. And Moses told Sarah to describe herself and everybody in his household to describe Sarah as his sister, not his wife, so that they won't kill, so that the people in Egypt wouldn't kill Moses, because he's afraid they would do so to get Sarah for her great beauty. So now he's afraid of the same thing. And Abimelek, that's what it is. And Negur, that's the place. Negur, they're in Negur, and they're in the lands of King Abimelek. And so Abraham is afraid, get my patriarchs mixed up. Abraham is afraid that Abimelek is not a man of God. And so they give him the same story they gave to Pharaoh. Remember that worked out really well for Abraham and Lot, who, when they were down in Egypt, because they came out of Egypt very wealthy, because Pharaoh was so, he sent them away, but before he did, he loaded them up with gold and silver and cattle and slaves, and they left very wealthy. So it was, if we look at it, and forgive me, but I can't help but kind of see it in a way, don't we have a bit of a scheme here? Could we even use the scam word? See, if you know you got God on your side, and God's going to be the strong man in the deal, and if you can get one of these kings to do something that's, is deserving of offense or even appearance of offense, and it worked so well in Egypt and really made them rich, and it's been quite a while, it's been decades since then, maybe they could use a nice infusion of cash. I'm just speculating. So anyway, as Abraham expected, Abimelek does indeed take Sarah for his wife, and you got to wonder a little bit about Abimelek's eyesight. And forgive me, I don't mean to be disparaging of older women. I actually find older women beautiful, but Sarah is in her 90s now, and I guess I don't know. I'll just leave it at that. So Abimelek picks her out of the crowd, out of the village, out of the city, to be his wife. Is this 90-plus-year-old woman who's already, well, according to Sarah, she's already past the age of the womanly ways. Menopause has already happened, but we think that she's probably ripe again. Is that the right word? Because we know that God promised that she would have a son in the coming year. So maybe she's flush with the blossom of womanhood, of young womanhood again, even in her 90-plus-year-old frame. And that, so maybe that's kind of, that's what caught Abimelek's eye. We don't know. But anyway, so the good news is that before Abimelek can, make good on his new plans, he's visited by God in a dream. And wouldn't it be great if God would visit us all in a dream and warn us about the offenses that we're about to do? How much? Okay, because basically, before I say that, God comes to Abimelek in a dream and says in no uncertain words, here's some of that beautiful biblical drama, you are a dead man. Dead man walking was what came to my mind, like the old thing they said, you are a dead man, for you have taken the wife of you have taken a married woman into your house. And Abimelech's like, whoa, 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 I didn't touch her yet. I didn't know. And God says, yes, I know. That's why I withheld this. I restrained you, so to speak. I'm paraphrasing. I restrained you from touching Sarah for that very reason. If you don't give her back, continues the Lord, then you are dead, and everyone in your household is dead. Now, key word there is if you don't, like, I think he says something like make it right. Return her to Abraham. And I can't quite remember the word. It took me about 7 readings before that jumped out at me, because that's probably going to be the answer later when I'm going to pose a question. And it's the same question that I posed on Facebook. So I'll get to that. So Abimelech wakes up and it's like, whoa, 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 this is not good. And so he goes down and he tells in the morning, I guess, he tells all of his men, his soldiers and his lieutenants and everything what happened. And they're all really scared, the one true God, because they're believers. These are men of God. These are not heathens. These are not the Gentiles. These are men of God. And the one true God whom they worship and believe and abide is threatening to kill every last one of them. So they're very worried. Just let that settle in and sink in. These are not the bad guys. These are the good guys. And apparently they're so good that God is going to, play his hand into the game in order to prevent them from doing a misdeed. Makes you wonder, wouldn't it be great if, like, Jim Baker had that kind of an experience? Step in and before Jim and Tammy, whose church is just right down there. Actually, it was just recently sold. The Praise the Lord compound. You can pass it on the 5 freeway, or maybe that's the 405. Yeah, 405. Wouldn't it be great? I mean, if the Lord had stepped in on Jim Baker's behalf and one night and said, Jim, the thing you're thinking about doing, nuh-uh, it's going to cost you everything. But, well, some people claim that happens, but, is God playing favorites? Not so sure. So anyway, Abimelech and the men are quite upset, and Abimelech immediately goes to Abraham and says, hey, what's up with this? Why did you do this? Why didn't you tell me? And then here Abraham, remember back in Abraham in Genesis 12 and others, and even earlier than that, I commented that Abraham was kind of a whiny guy, and here he is kind of whiny again. He's pulling, even though he's over 100, he's about 100 now, and he's like, but because Abimelech says, but why did you tell me that Sarah was your sister? And Abraham says, but she is my sister. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but this is how it comes out. If you actually read it, and even if you listen to it in the King James edition, the Bible reading, and it really comes out that way. The reader, at least, had that whiny tone in his voice. But she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but though she's not the daughter of my mother, so they're half brother and half sister. Yeah, nice family values, I guess. But okay, we'll forgive that. Back in the day, right? They didn't know any better, I guess. And well, meanwhile, look at what his Abraham's nephew Lot's doing with his daughters up, basically within the same time period up there on the mountain. So, man, good thing. I hope the Christians aren't basing their family values plan on the patriarchs. Because clearly those are some screwed up family values. So, he's excusing it away and saying she really is. Technically, she's my sister. And now I can kind of see, I didn't see that before in Genesis 12 when they were pulling the same stunt with Pharaoh. But now I see it. Okay, I guess it kind of is. It looks like a loophole to me, but, there you go. What are you going to do? So, Abimelech, realizes, that Abraham's got God on his side. The only thing he can do is like make amends and try to set things right, even though he didn't do anything wrong. Really, I mean, even God, it says to him in the dream, he says, "I know you did this with a clear conscience." Shouldn't God be having this dream with Abraham the night before he had the idea of hatching this scheme? He said, Abraham, that idea you have in your mind of passing Sarah off as your sister. Don't do that. Abimelek and his team are a righteous group, men of God. Let them be. And just because you thought about it, I'm going to seal Sarah's womb for a little bit, because that's what he does to Abimelek, right? So even though he knows that Abimelek is blameless, he nevertheless seals up not only his Abimelek's wife's womb, but all the wombs of all the slave girls in Abimelek's household. I guess he didn't have any. Well, I guess concubines, are they slaves? I don't know. So that's going on. So Abimelek then decides, I better make things right, and it's starting to rain, huh? And so he gets a whole bunch of cattle and sheep and slave men and slave women, and gives them all to Abraham, and says, here you go, I'm trying to make it right, and here's Sarah back, and then just to seal the bargain, he gives Abraham 1,000 shekels of gold. And I didn't know how much that was, so I looked it up, and it turns out that at that time, 1,000 shekels of gold, well, the average worker at that time would have made 10 shekels a year. So that's 100 years worth of average working man's salary, right? So what would that be if the average working man's salary here in America is like, I'm just pulling a number, $50,000? What's 50,000 times 100? I can't do that math. That's a lot of money. So that is a grand payment. Now God, after Abimelek gives Abraham the 1,000 shekels of silver and all the slaves and the cattle and all the whole thing, God then finally smiles and intervenes and opens the wombs of Abimelek's wife and his slave girls, and all is right again with the world. And I think that's where the chapter ends. So a lot in this in terms of, well, I learned something. I have a Facebook page where I'm posting all of these videos, and then I'm sharing them on my main Facebook, on my Facebook profile page as well. So I have a Facebook page called Freeway Bible Study, and I did that deliberately so that I would have a home for all these videos, because it's going to be a lot of videos. On YouTube, I'm also uploading them to YouTube. I'm segregating them on my main channel into playlists, one playlist for every chapter for every book of the Bible. So it's going to be interesting. I hope this unfolds nicely. But I'm also posting comments and questions, and I've as of this morning, I uncovered an interesting observation. And the observation is this: if I post a question on Facebook related to the behavior of the humans in the Bible, why did they do this? Why? Namely, in particular, lately, Abraham. Why is Abraham doing this? Why is he pulling these schemes when he's got God on his side? Wouldn't he walk with impunity through every life situation? I mean, if there's anybody that can walk through the valley of the shadow of death with impunity, it's Abraham, who's already 4 times walked and talked with God, and 5 times been guaranteed a covenant with the Lord. If I do that, then what the believers typically do, their response on Facebook, is one of 2 things. One, to either say that man is fallen and is expected to sin, which is a good response. I can take that and put that in the bank, okay, because that's in keeping with the story. The other response that they tend to give is to point forward to the New Testament, and I'm sure that, like I said in an earlier video, I'm sure that a lot of Christians in particular, of course, and LDS and FLDS would love to see the Bible. It could have a Council of Nicaea too, and switch the order up a little bit. Let's lead with the New Testament and have the Old Testament as a footnote. Because starting off with the Old Testament must feel like just an endless stream of previews at the movies. 2.5 years of previews in my case before we get to the main event. So I'm seeing that they point a lot towards the New Testament, the commentary of Jesus. And I've had actually people tell me or write to me and say, just can't you just skip ahead? So I've decided to change my tack a little bit, because that seems to be the pretty stock answer, and I can buy that. I can take that answer. That's good. That's a good answer, right? I mean, it's in keeping with the story and the narrative and the belief of the believers that man is fallen, mankind is fallen, and that Jesus is our salvation. So I probably won't be asking that particular question anymore. Instead, what I'm going to be looking for, and the questions I'm going to be asking, are more related to the behavior as the described behavior of God, and how God is treating human beings, because this is the same God of the New Testament. And if the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost are indeed one, we are witnessing the deeds of Jesus in some ways, right? I mean, so I think this is good commentary. We can't say that this is another God. This is the same God, and if His values are timeless and immutable, then what He's doing, we can hold Him accountable to His behaviors in the Old Testament. So that's probably how I'll frame things in the future. Is, what do you think of? Because I'm starting to lead off with posts on Facebook of, Christians, Jews, Muslims, FLDS/LDS : what do you think of this? And I'm going to be really interested to see what they say. And again, I'm not doing this overtly to be inflammatory. I'm really doing it because I'm reading the Bible. I'm making a really serious effort at this, and I haven't settled my mind on these things. Clearly, the believers are the people who have gone through this same process, I hope, and have settled their mind on these questions. Maybe they haven't exactly encountered these questions, but whatever they've done to settle their mind must give them a ready answer, must provide them a ready answer to it. And if they don't have a ready answer, that's interesting in of itself. And if they think that they need to rely on talking to their pastor or rabbi to get the answer, that's revealing in of itself as well. As I wouldn't think that the creator of the universe would require anybody to translate his instruction manual and history guide. Okay, so I think I'll stop there. Thank you for joining me for another day of Freeway Bible Study. This is the last day for this week, Friday, so I take a break on the weekend. And I'll see you all on Monday for Genesis 21. Have a great day. Make it a good life. See you.